Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview the annual rivalry game in the Palmetto State. That, of course, is Clemson and South Carolina. This one taking place in Columbia. Gamecocks won it a year ago. Both teams on a little bit of a hot streak coming into this one. South Carolina beat Kentucky last week. Clemson has won, I think, 2 or 3 in a row at this point, including a defeat of North Carolina. The line on this one is a bet online this week, I think, is 7 points over under at 52.5. That makes for a predicted final score of Clemson 30, South Carolina 23. Computers of note: Jeff Sagarin, FPI, and SP Plus all favor Clemson by 4 points. That is accounting for the 3-point home field advantage in Carolina's favor. Team Rankings has Clemson a 6-point favorite. So interesting here. The odds makers have Clemson a bigger favorite than the computers do. Blake, it should be a fun game ahead. Now, I think we're both having trouble knowing what to make of it, but it'll be interesting.
First time, if you knew this, in 7 straight games heading into this one, that the spread has been double digits, which, I mean, is probably not stunning, right, given where Clemson has been. But it's the first time in 7 meetings that it's been under 11.5 based on what I'm looking at here. So, yeah, so only a touchdown in this one, which, of course, we know last season South Carolina snapped the streak, won that game, wild game 31-30. And, yeah, this is this is an interesting one because, like you said, I don't know where this thing or how this thing unfolds just based on these two teams. But like many teams in college football, been much better at home than on the road. And, well, who's the home team here, Chris? So we'll see if they can find a way to pull this off. So
our preview is brought to you by BetOnline. The holiday season is off and rolling with NFL in full stride, the NBA and NHL hitting midseason form. BetOnline is your number one destination for all your sports wagering information with up-to-the-minute sports wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions. BetOnline is a top spot for everything pro and amateur sports, and it's not just the Big Four. BetOnline has info available at your fingertips, both desktop and mobile access at any time for almost any sport that's played. That goes from MMA to international soccer. Head to BetOnline today. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, let's start with Clemson having the ball in this one. The Tigers averaging 30.4 points a game. Gamecocks giving up 27.3. Clemson averaging 5.4 yards per offensive snap. Carolina giving up 5.6. Clemson is running it exactly 50% of the time. I say running it. Sacks count as passing plays. Clemson getting 5.0 per rushing play and 5.7 per passing play. Carolina giving up 4.3 and 7.0. Carolina really been vulnerable to the pass. Clemson turning it over 2.4% of the time. Carolina forcing turnovers 1.6% of the time. Yeah, Clemson has not been great on offense. South Carolina has not been great on defense. It'll be interesting to see how this portion of the matchup materializes, Blake.
No, you said it. I think this is I don't know. I'm very curious to see how this game starts because, like you said, I think you've got a team offensively that, is consistency has been an issue at times, for sure. But, again, look at what they've done over the past several weeks. They're on a 3-game winning streak now. They put up points. And, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the South Carolina defense, we talked about it this season. One of those situations where, you just kind of look at the numbers and the yards per play, allowed and those kind of things. But, again, it's not as though Clemson, I'm looking here, covers there, and you mentioned some of the numbers specifically, but like 5.4 yards per play, that's 85th nationally. Like that's not anything. I mean, South Carolina's not the best at that statistically, but that's not exactly a number that's just going to completely intimidate you if you're the defense. And of course, looking at some of the other areas, yeah, I mean, I think this is where if the South Carolina passing game gets going, we've seen kind of the numbers the Clemson passing game gets going. We've seen some of the numbers that South Carolina's given up there, allowing 20.8. I think you're looking at some of the numbers here. 61.6 is the completion percentage allowed to opposing quarterbacks, which that's 85th nationally too. 12.4 yards per completion allowed. So, yeah, I think that is certainly one area that you look at here. And see if Clemson can get some, things going there. And obviously they'll have some options in the running game too, which again, it's just such a, I know we're going to go to the other side of the ball here, but it's like, this is just such a weird matchup. I feel like this year with these two teams, but I don't know. This is a tough one.
On the other side, South Carolina averaging 27.7 points a game. Clemson giving up 21.1. Carolina getting 5.8 yards per snap. Clemson giving up 4.6. Carolina throws the ball 58% of the time, 7.0 yards per pass. Clemson a lead against the pass, giving up 4.5 yards per throw. Running plays, Carolina not been great there, 4.1 per rushing play. Clemson giving up 4.7. It's rare that you see a team that is more vulnerable on the ground than via the air, but that's Clemson for you. Oh, and by the way, Clemson forcing turnovers at a 3.2% rate. That is elite. By the way, Clemson's offense on the field for 77 plays a game and its defense only 63. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Clemson keeps the ball a lot. South Carolina giving up 1.9% in terms of turnovers on offense. And again, as we've said all year, sacks are the issue for Carolina. It's given up 39. Clemson has had 28 sacks. So this just in, protecting Spencer Rattler will be a big key to this game.
Yeah, I was going to say, shocker. We could just play this on loop for every South Carolina game.
Like we have.
But, I mean, if you look at the numbers, right? I mean, again, this is also a team that's won 3 in a row. And, he sacked twice against Kentucky. He didn't get sacked against Vanderbilt, 3 against Jacksonville State. But, of course, you go back to some of those games against the upper tier teams. Sure, he was getting sacked 4 or 5, at 6 against Tennessee. And so, then, of course, the game against North Carolina all the way back in week 1, getting sacked 9 times. But, I think the interesting part here is, like you said, Clemson's done a good job of, especially when you look at the interception numbers and those kind of things. And of course, getting the quarterback helps with that, I'm sure, when you kind of look at, how that unfolds. But, Rattler, for the most part, he's got 7 interceptions on the year. He's thrown a couple in this, 3-game winning streak, but still, I mean, he is someone that, as we said, as he goes, they go. Like, that's just kind of what it comes down to. They need him to be in a position to win the game for them and give them the opportunities to do that, because when he can, we know, I mean, there are capable players on the South Carolina offense that can make plays, even with the injuries they've had, to Wells and all that. So, yeah, I think this is one where it's a tough matchup because, again, we do see what Clemson has done defensively and how good they have been in a lot of areas. But, yeah, I mean, how can you get to the next step of the conversation if you don't just start and say, if South Carolina can't protect the quarterback, they're in trouble. If they can, then you give Spencer Rattler some opportunities to make some plays, even against, a defense like this. So,
all right, we've talked about special teams and penalties and the other things that don't always go into those stats. Clemson, very disciplined, 44 yards of penalties a game. It's special teams, pedestrian, I guess is a good way to describe them. 76th nationally in special teams rankings, according to SP Plus. South Carolina, we have talked about how good its special teams have been under Shane Beamer. 16th nationally, that's a little low for them. I think there were 1 or 2 last year in SP Plus. 58 yards of penalties, not great. But in any case,
I'm glad you're picking first here, because I don't know. This is just this is one of those games. Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here, okay? I'm the analytics guy. I give you all the reason and the logic. And I just looked up. I remember that the Jack Nicholson movie where he's the author and was asked about how he writes, and I'll tone it down a little bit. He says, I take away reason and accountability. And I feel like that's kind of how you have to approach the Gamecocks in November. They call it Cocktober. Really, it's Cockvember. That's when South Carolina turns it on under Shane Beamer. They have been doing unbelievable things in November's past. They are starting to do some of that now. They hammered Vanderbilt a couple of weeks ago. I know it was Vandy, and part of that was Vandy seemed to throw in the towel that day. But again, this is what Shane Beamer's teams do. There was no way that you could really see it coming against Tennessee last year. As you pointed out, there were double-digit underdogs at Clemson, which had won a boatload of games in a row. I want to say it was 40-something. I could be wrong. I'm sure people will correct me in the comments. And that's where I'm going in this game, Blake. I've given you all the reasons statistically that Clemson could win, but I just look at what Shane Beamer does in November. I look at where this game is played, and perhaps against my better judgment, I'm going with the Gamecocks in this one.
Yeah, like you said, I think you look at some of the numbers here, as I mentioned earlier, you talk about these two teams, combined 1-7 away from home, but they're combined 11-2 at home, which again, South Carolina's the home team here. Um, and here's what I'll do. We're gonna make everybody happy here, okay?
Right.
You are usually the one that goes with the analytical part.
I
I'm gonna
am.
go with the analytics on this one, because I do think, again, you look at what Clemson's done, um, really more recently, I think, because again, it was kind of rocky there for a while. But yeah, I mean, they have won 3 in a row, beat North Carolina the way they did last week. Um, they've played some pretty good football over the past, and again, South Carolina has too, but to make everyone happy here, we're gonna I will pick Clemson. Uh, that way everyone has reason to be thankful for something going into Thanksgiving here in our picks, our Thanksgiving picks. So yeah, I guess I will lean more towards the analytics and go with Clemson. But again, if you look at the numbers, South Carolina, as you said, they're good at home. They play well in November. We're seeing that same theme play out here. They broke the streak last year. Feeling a lot more momentum on their side than they had there for a while there, where it felt like the season was just completely getting away from them. Oh, by the way, South Carolina's 5-6, so getting to a 6th win, we know what that means. And I'll go Clemson, but I think the spread, this thing's at 7. If it gets to like 7.5 or something like that, even at 7, I think I would take South Carolina on that, which again, we normally are just picking games, but this is one where I look at it and I'm like, 7 feels like a lot here for this kind of game between these two teams with where they are right now. So I would probably do that from a betting standpoint. But again, I'm not a professional. Go listen to Brian Edwards and Jay Greason on our bet show that we have coming out. They'll give a better idea of where they're at on that game. But yeah, to make everyone happy, Chris, I will go with the Tigers, the Clemson Tigers.
What just happened here?
I know I supported the analytics. You
I
went
know.
with emotion. Usually it's the other way around. So,
Well, all kidding aside, we say emotion. This is the point of the season where you try to quantify what coaches have their teams bought in. And I'm not saying Clemson doesn't, right? I'm just
but
saying
they're
that
used to
Shane
playing for
Beamer,
bigger things at this point too.
well,
So,
that they are. That's it. But I'm just saying maybe it's a small sample size. I don't know. But what Shane Beamer has done the last couple seasons in November is sort of undeniable. And in the era where you've got transfer portals and kids with one foot out the door and assistants knowing they're going to be fired, everybody deals with some kind of turmoil. I don't know if Shane Beamer's last 2 Novembers have been proof that maybe he's got a skill in doing that better than other people do, or if it's just, again, if it's a small sample size fluke. I don't know what it is, but I rode with it. So that's
well,
where we are.
there's something to building momentum too when you have your
Yeah.
last 4 games at home, and that's a nice spot to be in because you come out, win the first one, all right, good. Then you win the second one, all right, we're in a comfort zone here. Then you win the third one, tough game against Kentucky, all right, like we're in great shape right now. Because again, you just think about the grind of the schedule they played before that, and look, you look at sort of some of Clemson's numbers on the road. Like I said, they're not the greatest. They've been close games, but they have not played the greatest on the road. And so, yeah, this is look, as we've said this entire video, this thing could go either way. In my opinion, I think I would be surprised if this is one of those where Clemson just comes out and blows them out or anything. Again, I don't know that this team gets to that level in a game like this against South Carolina, but yeah, that spread just it feels high to me. But again, I'm not a betting professional, and South Carolina fans, don't worry. I've been talking up your basketball team like no one else out there. So even if I pick Clemson here, go watch our basketball stuff. I'm all in on your basketball team at this point. So
Well, and here's one more thing. The last few years, Carolina's win-loss record is higher than the computers have suggested it's been. There's
yeah,
something, again, that the computers all, even last year when they had those big wins at the end, I think they were mid-30s nationally by the computers when the season was said and done, even though they ended up, I think, in the polls to end the season. So, and this is a weird thing that the computers have a lower number on this game than the odds makers do, which is really, again, curious to me that Clemson's
Yeah.
the bigger favorite by the odds makers than they are in any of the computers that I looked at, factoring for the home field advantage. So, in any
Yeah.
case, weird game. Make of all that what you want. We try to lay the information out there, give you
Don't
our
listen to
best
us.
guesses, but we are not professional bettors. We just watch a lot of football and watch a lot of SEC football, and that's the best we got. And my goodness, 15 and a half minutes on this game is longer than I thought we'd go. So with that, thank you for watching. This has been your Southeastern 14 game preview presented by Bet Online.